Hello and welcome to Women Winning Their Way. I am your host, Clara Capano, and this is the show where we highlight key strategies to remind you that no matter where you are, that you can create success and do it all on your terms. I started this journey with the show just during the pandemic in 2020, and just the amount of shares, the amount of value that the guests have brought. I learn something new each and every day. And I'm just so grateful to be able to have you share time with us. One of the things we're going to talk about today is trial and error. Life is a bunch of trial and error. We try new things, some work, some don't. So, to help us with this conversation and to really get clear on how we can use our trials to actually build our strengths, I am bringing on one of my new friends. This is Shauna Green. So, Shauna, welcome to the stage. It's so good to have you here.
Great to be here. Thank you for the invite.
You bet. So you kind of run in the financial world and you are the owner of Front Range Insurance. So briefly just tell us a little bit about what that means and what you do.
Oh man, what does that mean? It means a heck of a lot. It means that I am a woman who runs alongside a lot of men, and I specialize in helping property owners and property investors and business owners to protect all their assets. I also specialize in infinite banking, so I help people to create their own big system with their life insurance policies.
Fantastic. Hey, as women in business, we need this stuff. This is what's going to help all of us. So I love that. So let's go ahead and kick this off. We're talking about creating success, but also doing it on our terms. And I do want to ask you a lot of questions about your path. But before we do that, I want you to think back to when you were a little girl, when you were young and you thought about success. What did you think success was going to look like for you when you were younger?
Well, I'm going to give you two answers with that one. So, the first thing, I grew up thinking that I was just going to be a mom, and I was going to be at home, and success meant that I had a happy marriage. In that definition, I've definitely failed. More than one divorce.
Trial and error, right?
Right. But with that, I've learned so much. And so,
Mhm.
but it's funny, I actually did a little exercise a little while ago where I was supposed to think back to the games that I used to play as a little girl. And when I was a little girl, I used to wake up at 5 a.m. in the morning and sneak out to our living room because we had an old fashioned typewriter. And I liked to play secretary, and I'd be super quiet because I didn't want mom to wake up and make me go back to bed. So, I'm living the dream here.
Fantastic. And hey, I'm one of those people. My mother commonly refers to my first marriage as the dress rehearsal. So, sometimes we have to do those things. So let's dive into this because again, we're talking about the fact that success doesn't have to be one size fits all. And for so many of us, the dreams that we had and the vision that we had when we were younger sometimes always doesn't come to fruition, and that's okay. So, we're talking about the idea that life is all about trial and error. So when we talk about this, what does this mean for you? What do you mean when you talk about using your trials to build your success?
I think one of the things that I've gained through the trials that I've gone through is the ability to know that it is okay for me to slow down. I need to take time to recover and to process the things that have happened so that then I can actually use them. If
Mhm.
I go too fast and I keep trying to push it aside, all they do is keep me stumbling.
Yeah. Now, do you have a process that you use to process all of this? Do you do it like on a monthly basis, quarterly? Like, how do you do that? If you could kind of walk us through.
So one of my heroes is Benjamin Franklin, and he processed everything. I actually love to use a method where when something happens that I'm not happy with, I actually take my paper, divide it into four columns, and I think about exactly what happened, and I write it down, and then I write down how I responded, and then I write down what I want to have happen, and then
Mm.
the next column is how I'm going to make it happen next time. So I try to do it regularly. I also do a weekly inventory, and then I do my goals quarterly for
Mhm.
my year goals, and then I have the long term goals.
Yeah. I really like how you identify that. Okay, how did I approach it this time? What could I do differently or do better next time? And then being able to use that again because it's always a process of growing because sometimes we do the best with what we have today, but that doesn't
Yeah.
mean it can't be better tomorrow. So I love that process of sort of the recalling and the reflecting on it. Now, how did you come to this process? Did you do this because of a lot of errors, and like how did you kind of learn this process?
I am a super reader. I know I got it from a book a long time ago.
Hmm.
So I can't tell you which one, but it has been incredibly effective for me. It helps me to stay accountable, and it
Hmm.
helps me to see how I can become a better leader.
Yeah. So, we talked about this concept of moving so fast and, making sure that we're taking time to process. This is something that I see so many, not just women, but a lot of us women, because we're multitasking and we think that the more we do, the better it's going to be. What have you found for yourself as some of the pitfalls of moving too fast?
Ooh, that's a good question. Um, Burnout, I think, is the biggest one. I
Hmm.
think we, especially as women, we continue to think that we have to keep giving and giving and giving, and eventually there's nothing left. Um,
Hmm.
so I think that's the biggest one.
Yeah.
You can't think straight. You just don't function. Your body
Hmm.
gives out.
Yep, it's so true. I know I really try to, build in some time each day, even if it's just 15 minutes, to bring some joy into my world. And one of the things that I love to do on a quarterly basis is take a nothing day. And I just take a day to just really unplug. And, it really does. And even when I was driving back home after the holidays, my creativity was going because I was able to step away and decompress for a few days.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, and I would add exercise. It's so
Hmm.
important that we are getting that because it helps burn off that anger and the frustration and stress.
Exactly. Yep, gotta move the body, get those endorphins going. So, any other lessons, any other trial and error lessons?
Sorry, it kind of cut up.
Oh, any
What was
other
that?
trial and error lessons that you want to share?
Yeah, I think going back to the fact that women just keep giving and giving and giving, I can tell a personal story that really helped me to set the groundwork for my business. I used to work for someone, and he was very old school, didn't have a website, just paper files. And he wanted it to be where I just came in and I answered the phones. But our agreement was that I was actually going to take over once he retired. And so
Mm,
I saw that I needed to add value to this agency, and I needed to learn. And that was just something that he wasn't willing to offer. An opportunity came for me to take a commercial insurance class, which I needed, and he gave me permission to go. He responded to emails, and it was about a month-long process. And then the day before it came time for me to go to this class, I reminded him that I'd be gone for the next 2 weeks because I'd be in this class. And he looked at me and he just said, "I don't want you to go. I want you to know if you go, I'm going to be very upset." And
mm,
it was this moment for me where I thought, what do I do? This
mhm.
is my future partnership relationship. I need to be able to work with this man, but I know I need this. And so I finally made the decision. I said, okay, well, I'm going. And so I went to this class, and when I got back, he fired me. And I went home and cried and figured out finances, and I started my own agency.
That's awesome. And
Yeah,
I mean, it's so hard going through that, but the lesson there is, sometimes we got to do what we know is best for us. So
yeah.
let's talk about this because there are some people out there that are watching that might want to take a leap and start their own thing. And that can be very scary. So, what were some of the steps that you took, and maybe just even some advice if somebody is looking to go and start their own chapter? What are some of the starting points for them to maybe help them do it successfully?
I think the first thing they need to do is to figure out what kind of a person they are. Are they that person who expects perfection in everything, or are they the person who's going to jump in? That way they can figure out what they need to be cautious of.
Mm.
Me, I'm that girl who's going to jump in, and I'm going to figure it out as I go. And so I knew that I also needed to have somebody who could mentor me, somebody who could teach me. And so I started to gather those connections around me so that I wouldn't mess up too big.
Mhm. Yeah. I cannot underestimate and understress the importance of a good mentor. I always tell people, think about who is it you want to become and then find people who are already doing those things. I think a lot of times people are afraid to ask for help because one, they don't want to bother people. Everybody's so busy. And two, sometimes they don't know who to seek out. What would you encourage somebody to do? Like, how do we find a good mentor?
I would encourage people to get over themselves. Stop
Mhm.
thinking that you're going to be a burden to people and realize that you are giving a gift. When I get to help someone, I learn so much, and it helps me because they then refer, and it gives. Um, what was the question? I kind of lost
Just
track.
like maybe like how do you find a good mentor? Like if you wanted to approach someone and ask them to be your mentor, what's a way that you can do it, that they see the value for themselves as well and are more inclined to say, yes, I'll mentor you.
I think it was Robert Kiyosaki. I just finished reading a great book by him called Before You Quit Your Job. And he talks about that in detail. And he talks about how you need to find somebody who's in the position that you want to be in someday.
Mhm.
You don't get advice from somebody who's failing, right? So I think that's one aspect. I think another, man, there are so many great people on social media today too, where you
Mhm.
can get free information. And you need to do a little background checking, make sure that they're legit.
Mhm.
And then my favorite, I really love books and I
Yeah.
love journaling because
Mhm.
at times I find that I'm my best coach because I know myself best. And if I'm really digging deep, I
Mhm.
discover new talents and new abilities.
Yeah. And you bring it back to again, really knowing you. You brought it up a couple of minutes ago when you talked about, where to get started. You're doing it now. You need to know who you are. And this goes back to again creating success on our terms because again, everybody processes differently. And the one thing that you said is again, don't learn from people who are not successful in the areas you want to grow. And I know for me, when I seek out coaches and mentors, I go to the people who are successful in the areas I want to be because we do. And I think sometimes we have a tendency to talk to too many people and ask for advice from the wrong people. So, again,
Yeah,
remembering that a mentor, again, is a teacher for you. And yes, you can get so much free information online. That's one of the most beautiful things about technology right now. I think that's
yeah, I
awesome.
agree. I
Hmm.
would also add to that. I see within my business groups a lot of women who only get advice from women. I would also
Hmm.
say branch out, go to somewhere that you're not quite as comfortable with. There's some great men out there who are killing it. And
Hmm.
don't be afraid to be in the man's world.
Yep. So I want to talk about that a little bit because you're in a man's world. You came out. We started the conversation talking about that, and for some people, it's not intimidating. I have a lot of masculine energy, so I can do really well. But for some people, they get either very intimidated. There are different ways of communicating. We contend. I know for me, one of the challenges that I've had is I became so task oriented and so masculine I had to learn to soften a little bit. So, what have been some of the things that you've been able to adapt to and evolve with in being able to be successful in a man's world, but also maintain, your own identity, your own femininity?
You know, I find actually that I'm kind of a weirdo. I've always kind of done my own thing. I think a large part of that is that in seventh grade, I took myself out of school and I started homeschooling. And since that time, I haven't really been in the same confines that a lot of people are. I don't see a difference between me and a man.
Hmm.
And I think that's a big thing. You have to get over thinking that you are different. You are because you're female and your brain works differently and all the other things, but you're not in the fact that you're just as intelligent
Yeah.
and you just come to the table with different ideas and different abilities. Um, I think for me, being in a man's world, the thing that I've learned is that it is an advantage to be a female. You can talk to a man a way that a man cannot talk to a man. They
Mm.
let you get away with being pretty straightforward because they don't want to be as offensive to you a lot of times. Whereas if a man talks straightforward to the other guy, they're going to get competitive with each other.
That's a
So,
really great point. Again, let's bring those strengths in. But I want to rewind for a second because you just dropped something pretty big and you just kind of glossed over it. In seventh grade, you took yourself out of school and put yourself into homeschooling. Talking
I did.
about women winning their way, I got to hear more about this story. How did this come to fruition?
Oh, it was such the junior high drama. I had a boyfriend and he had two best friends and all of them liked me. They called me and wanted to know who I liked best individually and I told each of them it was them and then they got together and after that it was just terrible at school. And so I talked to my mom about it and she said, let's my cousins were homeschooling. And so she said that maybe that would be a good choice. So I went back
Mhm.
to school the next day and the drama continued. So I brought all my books from my locker. I gave them all to my counselor and told her I'd be homeschooling, went home and told my mom, and she was like, okay, let's do it.
Mhm. Yeah.
So
That's incredible. You have always been an advocate for yourself from a young age. I'm hearing this pattern again of, you not letting people again, put you in a corner. Do you think is there somebody else? Was your mom, your grandma, was there someone else in your family that you kind of feel maybe taught you these things?
it's kind of funny because I've actually gone into waves. When I was younger, I think my first point of realizing that was when I was allowed to homeschool.
Mhm.
And it kind of, my grandpa has always been a free spirit. He owned his own plumbing shop. He was the man who duct taped everything together and made it work the way he needed it to.
Mhm.
My mom is My grandpa describes my mom as a fart in the wind. She just goes wherever she wants, you know? And so, yeah, I think we have quite a few free spirits. But I will
Mhm.
say, with my first marriage, I actually lost that because I
Yeah.
was married to a man who was incredibly aggressive, and I became really submissive. And that was one of the reasons I decided to leave, is because I couldn't even remember who I was anymore.
Mhm.
And so it's not something that just stays with you. You have to fight to keep it.
You do. And I think, so many times we can lose ourselves, whether it's in a relationship or even, in a job. Sometimes that job can become our identity. And then when it ends, either because we're ready for it to end or we get fired or let go, and we have to do that. So, what were some of the things that you did? Because after years of not being true to yourself, you can't just necessarily wake up the next day and be like, oh, I'm back to Shauna.
Yeah.
What were some of the things that you did to reconnect with yourself?
Again, reading. I read a book called The Verbally Abusive Relationship, and I remember I was so angry as I read that book because all of a
Mhm.
sudden I had labels to identify what I had been trying to figure out. And I found a counselor who was absolutely amazing. And I asked my friends, and just
Mhm.
being able to hear through friends and through dating again that those things weren't normal, I started
Mm.
to recover and be able to understand what things weren't right.
Yeah. So if somebody is maybe in, an environment, whether it's personal or work related, and they're just kind of getting the sense, what are some maybe questions they can ask themselves or things they can do to start to test? Is it something that I can change or do I need to change from the situation?
My first go to always is to identify the feeling. You need to figure out what it is you're feeling, and then you need to figure out why. Where is
Mm-hmm.
it coming from? Because maybe you feel like you're being trapped. Maybe you feel like you're not allowed to level up because you can't learn. You need to
Hmm.
figure out what it is, and then you need to figure out if you're content and you can handle it, or you need to move on.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to go back into this concept of, trial and error. And, when I started my career, gosh, I can think of so many things that I messed up on, but again, they're all learning lessons. Taking on clients because I needed the paycheck, but they were the wrong clients. And that taught me how to do a better job intaking and setting expectations. Can you think of, as you started your own business, what were some maybe of the quote unquote mistakes that you made that you ended up learning from and building systems around?
The first one is that you need to have good financial organization. That's a big one. The next one, I think, is that you need to find your people as soon as possible.
Mhm.
It's often said there are riches and niches. And I have struggled for a little while trying to figure out what my niche was. And I
Mhm.
finally figured out it is property investors, because when I go into a room of them, I feel like I'm home. My grandpa was a property investor. I get
Mhm.
that person. So
Yeah.
I think that's probably a big one. Go find your niche and
Yeah.
figure out how you fit and how you're special compared to other people.
Yeah. And I think, and I know I struggled with this. I had a conversation with a good friend of mine the other day, this idea about a niche. And I think so many times we're hesitant to do that because we have this concept of, oh, but I want to help everybody. But I
Yeah.
love what you said. When you walk in that room, you're where you're supposed to be. And I
Yeah.
think that, again, it's changing that mindset that a niche, again, allows us to be an expert in a smaller area. It's not that we can't help people outside the niche, but we
Mhm.
have to really, again, know that. I run my people through an exercise and I always call it the feature benefit exercise, where they have to do this and they have to write down what are all the things that I bring to the table, but then be able to articulate why that's going to help their client. And that helps them to, again, really start to learn their value.
Yeah, I see that. I think one other thing too is that it helps you to not be as fearful when you know
Mhm,
that that's the place you should be.
mhm,
I had a lady who approached me not too long ago and asked me how I could be confident enough to speak with property investors, especially about life insurance policies. And you know, the goal, the I guess the key advice I gave her is that you need to start learning. And maybe it's time for you to slow down a little bit in your business so that that way you can invest in the learning part and then pick it up again. You need to
mhm.
build up those skills.
Yeah. Skill building is doing that. And again, when we build our skills, we also build our confidence. And that's really what people are looking for. Again, they want to work with people that are confident and also enjoy what it is that they're doing. So I think it's,
Yeah,
really powerful.
yeah.
As a leader, you run your own company. What do you feel have been some strengths that women can bring to the table as a leader?
I have seen within the life insurance industry that women are kicking butt. And the reason is because they are able to listen to people's problems and
Mm,
actually identify what it is that they need. We have the company that I work with, it's actually 60% women, which is
really?
phenomenal within the financial
Hmm.
industry.
Hmm.
And the carriers, that's actually what they've told us that women do better than men because we can actually figure out what the problem is and give them the right solution.
Yeah.
So I think that's a huge strength.
Yeah. So, in what you do, we talk about knowing our finances and looking at these things. And so many times I think we don't protect ourselves because it's so far off. We don't, that's the thing with insurance. You don't need it necessarily today. What are some of the biggest mistakes that people are making in not protecting themselves, especially as business owners?
You ladies need to go talk to an estate attorney as soon as possible. Make sure that your properties are in an estate. Make sure that your everything that you own is in an estate, so that if you get married, it's not going to be lost. I think also protecting ourselves financially. You need life insurance. That's a huge one. Now you're going to think that I'm like the female version of Job, but just in September, my husband had a stroke, and
Mhm.
you know, and he had cancer prior to that 4 years before. And so, there's something called living benefits, which will protect you for terminal, chronic, critical,
Mm,
and Alzheimer's. And it's something that everybody needs. They need
yeah.
to have living benefits in place because medical insurance doesn't always cover everything.
Mhm.
So I think that do your research on home insurance. We saw here in the Marshall Fire not too long ago that people were
Mhm.
losing their homes. And it's incredibly important to have that structure of protection as you're building your wealth so that you
Yeah.
don't lose it.
Exactly. And some people can think, oh, that's just such a cynical way to see it. But the truth is when you need it. And you're not going to make always the best decisions when you're in the midst of the stress. So being again proactive, you could always change it if you want to change it. But again,
Yeah.
really having that because if something should happen, again, you don't want people clamoring to try to put things together the right way. So again, it comes back to those intentions that we have. I'm very sorry to hear about your husband, so I hope he is doing okay and doing better with things. But
He's
that had to have brought an extra layer of things on you. So now you're running your own company, and now you have a partner who's dealing with a lot of big issues. What are some of the things that you do to sort of balance to be able to be there for your business, but also be there for your partner?
um well, he's actually living with his brother right now. He
Okay,
lives really close, and
okay.
so he's helping take care of it. We are making sure that I have meetings with my family every Sunday so that we
Mhm,
know what the schedule is and we know who needs help and how we can help. And I'm really big on scheduling. I love, oh, what is
mhm,
his name? The Perfect Week Formula. I can't remember his name, but that book has been life changing for me, where you schedule everything that's your priority
mhm.
first, and then you come back in and you fill it up with the work necessities. And so that's been really helpful. And then I'm a super early person, so I get up before every morning. I
Yeah.
get the most important things done, and then I get to
Mhm.
work.
Yeah. And I think just again, I talk a lot about time prioritization versus time management. And it's for exactly that reason. Again, you have to make the core things that you need to do a priority. And the things that get scheduled get done. And I love how you're building in the community. It's not just, hey, this is falling on just my shoulders. You're bringing everybody into it. And I think that's another thing I see more women than men trying to take it all on themselves and not
Mhm.
asking for help and not saying, hey, we're a family here. We've all got to work together. So, what would you say? So, again, if you had a mentor or a mentee right now, if you had to say, what were the top three things that you would tell a mentee for you? Like if you had a young person following you and a young female following you, what do you think are the three biggest things that we need to think about in going into the business world?
I think the first thing is to figure out that you can do it. Another one of my a really good book is Overcoming Under Earning. And
Mm,
I think for women, we have this concept that we can't make that kind of money. Often we think that. And that book totally makes it so that you realize that you can. So
mhm,
know that you can do it. And the second one, it's not always going to be fun. You need to work through the hard, and you need to make sure that you're in it for the long run, that you're not going to give up when things aren't quite comfortable.
mhm.
And then I
Yeah,
think last, build your community. You need to have people who are going to support you, who are going to refer to you, who are going to be business partners.
yeah. I think having those strategic partners is so critical in everything that we do. So
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
I
Mm,
think so too.
yeah.
It
So,
has made a huge difference for my business. So, in doing that, I've been able to, well, I've been asked recently to become a board member of one of the real estate investor groups, and I've been asked to speak at an investor summit in March. And, it's just because I have taken the time to try to become friends with people and not
mhm.
just doing business.
Yeah. And I think that that's so important. It's about the relationship. Again, relationships are built on trust, and trust is what leads to the business. So we have to make sure that we're investing in those relationships. I know it's Simon Sinek. He, was speaking at a conference one time, and he mentioned, he's like, invest in your relationships because they are your greatest assets. And I think that there's a lot of truth to that, regardless of what industry you're in.
Yeah, I agree with that. They can help you get places that you can't go get on your own.
Absolutely. And again, when people know that you're coming from a place of, wanting to deliver value and truly wanting to make impact, they want to open doors for you because
Mhm.
again, you're transferring trust. You're not just transferring a name, again, you're transferring trust. So I think that's huge. So, you have so much going on with your business. You just talked about doing some speaking. What are some of the other things that are upcoming for you? Sort of what's next for Shauna?
Next is that I'm hoping to take Nelson Ash's course about whole life because I find within the bank on yourself, be your own bank, infinite banking world, there's a constant struggle between which kind of policy is better. And so I want
Mm,
to become a master of both because I feel like both products are fantastic, both are useful, but both are right for the right client. And so
mhm.
it's not about the argument, it's about finding the right fit.
Yeah, that's great. I can't wait to, have you do all those. That's going to add so much more value, to those people. And obviously, you're a big growth mindset person, so always leveling up on your own. So that's great. So we started off, the conversation of success. And we are going to make sure to put all of your information in the show notes because I know there's going to be some other people out there that are going to want to learn more about what you do and see if you can help them. But sitting where you are today, how do you define success for yourself today?
Oh man, that's a big one. I think having success means that you feel good about the growth that you're having and that it's continual and it doesn't stop.
Yeah, so true, so true. Well, Shauna, thank you so much for joining us today. You are so strong and really have some very smart and tactical, perspectives and some advice for us, going through and again, really just making sure. And I love the concept that you brought up a couple of times of get over yourself. I think sometimes we are our own obstacle and sometimes we just have to get out of our own way. So I really appreciate you being here and sharing with us today.
Thank you for allowing me to. It's been a fun conversation.
Yeah, well, great. Well, everyone, so many things that we covered. And as we were talking, I was taking some notes. And, I love this concept of, again, trial and error. Because the reality is, not everything works. And everything shouldn't work because that is how we learn. So when things are working for you, even when things are working, assess them. Why are they working? How can I maybe even improve upon them? And if things aren't working, why? Is it because you don't have a system? Is it because it's not in alignment? Are you not doing it? So you always have to look at these. And if you do make a misstep, I love her concept of having time set down, every week and really going through, how did I approach this? How can I approach it differently next time? So you're constantly bringing these in and seeing how you can tweak and improve. She talked about the idea of, again, slowing down, giving yourself time to process, because that's how we really, again, get that creativity and can really connect. So making sure, I encourage people to do this every week when they sit down and do their weekly business planning meeting with themselves. The first part should be about the reflection from the week before. So doing this weekly, I know I love to do it quarterly as well. And just again, taking that time to just really sit back, assess, reflect so that you can go forward with more purpose. Do what you need to do. Do what you need to do. She talked about this several times and just so important. You know yourself better than others. I am I was listening to a book on my drive, and one of the things that they talked about is your head may know one thing, your tummy knows everything. You got to trust your gut and you've got to follow your own path. Just like we talk about in the show, women winning their way. Know what it is you need and go after those. If you need a certification, go for it. If you need to get out of a specific situation, get out of that situation. If you need to process things differently, take the time to do that, but do what it is you need to do. One of the other things that she hit on is that the road to success is not always going to be fun. I was having a conversation with one of my dear friends several years ago, and we were laughing because success is boring. To have success, you have to be disciplined, and the discipline is not always fun. So just know that not every day is going to be great. Not every day is you're going to want to be, doing cartwheels. So always come back to, again, what is your why? What is the impact and the value you're delivering to remind you of why you're here? And you're going to have to push through those moments and you're going to have to do the work that needs to get done. And just know not all of the work is going to be fun and enjoyable. You want most of it to be, but again, we even have to do those things that are not as fun. And then lastly, grow. You know, this is something that I talk about all the time too, is having that growth mindset. And one of the things I love to do is to not only read, but to study the patterns of other people. We always are growing. You probably have heard that phrase, you're either growing or you're dying. So, again, how are you investing in yourself? Growing could be reading books, listening to podcasts, going to events. It could be following and shadowing other people. It could be asking for feedback from your team members on yourself. But having that growth mindset, it's what allows us to expand, it's what allows us to get better. So always make sure that in every week and every day, you're doing something to help grow yourself. So thank you so much for joining today. I hope you got as much value in this conversation with Shauna as I did. I am so excited to, go out there and really start to process some of the things I'm doing so I can also level up in my world. And if you're looking to level up, don't forget to check out the Lioness League. That is the new community that I have created where we can go in and focus on growing stronger in the areas of mindset, leadership, and productivity. And it's going to be a wonderful area where you can gain access to easy, self directed modules that are going to really give you tremendous value and also do it in a way that's going to work for you and be extremely affordable. So check out the link. It'll only take you 30 seconds, but join the Lioness League and work with me and my community of women so that we can grow stronger together. And for the show, remember, our goal is to impact women on a global level, and not just today's women, but leaving messages for tomorrow's women, letting them know that no matter where they are, they can achieve success and they don't have to do it alone. And more importantly, they can do it on their own terms. So please continue to like, follow, share, and rate the show so we can keep that impact going. And we will see you next time. I'm your host, Clara Capano. Thanks for watching Women Winning Their Way.